Welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast, number 37. My last interview with Patrick McCarthy Sensei about his book, his new book, Kensei, Kyan Chotoku, The Man and His Art. Excellent book. Highly recommend. Get it. There'll be a link in the description. In this episode, we're going to cover a whole bunch of things related to Isshin-Ryu. So my Isshin-Ryu practitioners, this history will be particular interest to you. We talk about what karate's original intentions are and some plans he has for the future. All right. Hope you enjoy it. As always, please click that like button. Subscribe. It's important. Share the videos. Consider becoming a member. All right. We're just under 100 members right now. And, when I hit that 100 member mark, we'll do some live stuff, some live YouTube stuff. All right. So, hope you enjoy this part 4, the last part with McCarthy Sensei, and enjoy.
And then, of course, with this whole thing. But now that I finished the Kyan project, I'm going to go back and my Bubishi and my classic kata Okinawan karate and my ancient martial arts of Okinawa volume 1 and 2. And I'm doing a review this year and all of next year. I'm going to do a review and a revision to update the Itosu thing and add this story I just told you about this article and stuff like that. But so anyway, back to the fists just for a minute. So my take on this was, and I know how adamant, no, it's just this or it's just this or it's, right. I get all that, and I get how passionate everybody is about, no, it's this. Here's my take. This is just the Patrick McCarthy. The point is this. Certain fists for certain things, certain things for certain occasions. If I got a hold of you and I don't need a bear hug and I'm trying to gouge your eye out, I don't really think you're going to be using a fist to punch me in the face. I think you're going to be gouging my eye, biting my nose, and so often the circumstances dictate the methodology.
Well, look at in the book. Look at the Taiwan incident.
Well, yeah,
Kyan uses the fish hook. So I'm just going to mention this. When I read that in your original translation in the Nagamini book, I didn't say anything. I went down to the dojo and I'm working on people attacking me. And it was one of my black belts. And I didn't tell them what I was going to do. And out of nowhere, I fish hooked them. And I got my thumb right in there and grabbed. And if you ever saw the reaction, right? And the guy looked at me and goes like, what was that? It shook him up. And I said, well, I just read this, that Kyan would do this. And I said, I want to try it, but I want to try it where someone's actually coming at me. Not that I'm just going to do it, right? And it's not something I would necessarily do, but in combat, you just never know what you're going to have to do.
Well, and you being a cop, for God's sake.
Oh, forget it.
As you are. 100%. Not that you'd ever want to stick your fingers in somebody's orifice, to start with.
Right.
But, and if you did, you're certainly not going to stick it in with their teeth.
Right.
Smart not to go on.
Right.
But you're 100% right. And you think about, I often... I've literally taught more than 1,000 seminars in 30 years in 56 countries. But I actually, what else do you do in the pandemic? Is you go back and figure shit out,
Right.
Anyway, the point is a lot of, you always get some meat. You come, hey, well, this wouldn't work, and I say, look at. And I say, I'm going to pull out one of the deadliest weapons, and I say, come up and bear hug me, and don't let me go. You can pick, don't let me go. And I'm going to pull out one of the most dangerous weapons. Now, you okay? And, of course, the meathead would come and grab me and and I'd have to take a deep breath and really contract my muscles.
Right.
The guy was crunching me. But I pull out the deadliest weapon in the world. I stick in his eye, and I wouldn't pull. I just go, and you go,
Right.
So certain circumstances. But I mean, I couldn't imagine. Come on, bastard.
Right.
We're not Rue, right? So
right.
Certain jobs, certain tools I call that the toolbox theory. Remember, if a knuckle sandwich, a hammer, is the only tool in your box, you better hope that the jobs that you go to don't call for a wrench or anything else. So if the tools, if the hammer's the only job, you better hope all the jobs are a nail type thing, right? And the thing is, this is, yes, straight up and down, if you're foolish enough to turn around and say, yes, I'll fight you. Which is, again, not self-defense. You might be fighting for your life, but that's not the premise of self-defense.
Right.
Of course, you're going to be using, this and elbows and kicks. But in the premise of actual self-defense, when you are seized, there's just like a wonderful myriad of techniques other than impacting somebody.
Well,
And so, but can you imagine? And that's what I loved about some of the quotes, Kyan. A fist is like a pocket watch. You don't take it out of your pocket until you need to see what time it is. A fist kept up in your sleeve,
right.
It only comes out when the guy grabs you, and all of a sudden you go, "Hey, bang!" and you get got in the face. The fight's technically over.
Right.
And remember, until before 1921, the whole idea of closed fist impacting, which is the point I wanted to make, was an unknown phenomenon. It was something foreign people did. It wasn't anything that.
Well, the other thing you see clearly in the Motobu drills and the Kyan Kumite drills now, the photos, you're clearly seeing techniques that are not just punching and kicking. I mean, you're seeing Kyan's doing a throw, Kyan's doing a takedown on the ground. I see a couple of like this position here. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. That's Sun Tzu kata, right? Then you
100%.
also like, and the same thing in the Motobu drills where he counters and comes down and then comes up with the punch. Well, in Sun Tzu, Tatsuo
here's
the open
something
hand,
that a lot of people
technique.
don't discuss.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
here's a lot of things people don't discuss today. As well, back in the day, to take a photograph of somebody, it wasn't hang on for a sec. Hey, chief.
Right.
It was a big deal
Big deal.
get the photographer to come down and set up the tripod, put the big thing on top of it, light up the thing to make the flash. Don't anybody move and hold it for 3 seconds and boom, and I mean, so it was a costly, timely, and not your average bear could afford that type of thing back in the day. So what you and I would just say, hey, put that on a motor drive, or I'll tell you what, let me just film it and I'll break it down in photos.
Right.
That was an unknown phenomenon.
Right.
So when you see, like, say, multiple Choki's drills, for example, and I had this ongoing argument with a guy, doesn't matter who he is, who said, I said, yeah, look, I've watched the source do these, and here's my opinion. It looks exactly like what they're doing in the book. Okay, like he goes like this, you go like this, he goes like, and I'm like, that's not the way it really works in real life. There's not going to be a complicit, compliant partner working with passive resistance. This guy's going to be highly aggressive, and it's the second you even do anything that might even suggest it's going to go into hellfire.
So those drills in the Motobu book, I'm actually began teaching them in the dojo here, just because I want people to understand. I taught them at your dojo. Yeah. So the first one where he blocks and traps the hand, he blocks to the inside. So I tell people all the time, you block to the inside, that other hand is coming. It's coming immediately. Like I see all these karate guys block, hang out, and then counter with a punch. So I'm like, forget the elbow strike Motobu does. Forget the tech. He's telling you, if you're blocking to the inside, you better pay attention to that other hand. So if you get nothing else out of that first technique, Motobu's giving you something that's very, very important in the world of real fighting, not sports.
And the most important thing is you're getting that from a guy who's put it on the line. Forget Tsuji. I mean, this guy in Kyoto, which was later mislabeled in the 1925 King magazine, men's magazine with Funagoshi there. But,
right.
I mean, this guy was not afraid to take anybody on, and he's telling you that you're getting in, but you're getting in. You're and I mean, you look at the MMA guys, UFC guys.
They all look like that. They look the way Motobu. They look like
I mean, So, and here's the interesting part about it: Kyan Chotoku and Motobu Choki are actually blood.
They're related. Right, they're related.
They're born in the same year. They're both the third son of aristocratic family. It doesn't matter. And here's well, he was born of a concubine. Here I get a kick at. This is one thing again where people who are they're very seriously interested in the history and evolution, tactical and technical strategies of the art that brings us together, but they tend to stumble over contemporary assumption. It's like they don't study the historical, they don't understand. I mean, these guys had 8, 10, 12 wives back in the day. I mean, look at the Sho Taio. Geez, only got like 30 kids or something like that, And so I mean, Kyan, I think they had 10, he had 10 brothers. He had 6 brothers
Right. There was a big
Father,
family. A big
I,
family.
I
Right.
have to check, but there was like
Right. It was a big
six brothers
family.
and sisters, and
Right.
so anyway, the point is that it doesn't matter who the mother was; it came from that father. They were aristocratic people.
Right.
They had great education. They
Right.
had hands-on training, and these guys fought. They were functional, hands-on, and the idea of ritualizing something into a photograph and then describing it. When I read his work, it's become completely obvious to me. This is not a how-to book. This 1932, it's not a how-to book. This book was published for his students. That's what I get. And it was students who already had the lessons.
Yeah.
And this book is just serving to remind you, remember now, when you do this, then you do everything else.
Right.
And I thought, and that, in my opinion, is what Multiple Choki is trying to describe in his 1926 book. And then, of course, his 1932 book, Watashi no Karate, my art of karate, was a different look at the same thing and explaining it in terms. And it's interesting, they both had almost the same teachers, albeit at different times. I have since discovered that my studies of historical evolution have led me to the source of understanding those acts of physical violence that are habitual in human nature. And it doesn't matter if it's 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, or yesterday in the Queens. Empty hand, one against one, with the exception of standing back and say, let's dance.
Right.
They're the same all over the world. And you and I, who do Shorin-Ryu, we do Tai Chi pushing hands, we do grappling, stand, clinch. There's just, I don't care how you can describe it in different languages. A bear hug's a bear hug. And if you don't know how to quantify it, to understand its dynamics, you will never learn the mechanics behind how to escape and counter it. And the same as transferring kinetic energy. If you don't understand the body mechanics, and it's not discriminatory for me to say kids learn different from girls and girls get it.
Right.
That's just a pedagogical reality,
Right. 100%.
Learns the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcome. And God, even you and I are not going to be doing the same thing when we're 80 and 90.
No, absolutely not.
That we were doing when we were 20. But people don't get this. And in Japanese culture is so hermetically sealed in this conformist-based culture that there's no questioning of authority. And how about if somebody made a mistake 100 years ago or 50 years ago? Or how about this, Lord knows, this whole concept of and nobody, by the way, nobody ever talks about this. It starts around 1840-ish, and I just put the date on because that's when the Opium War started in China. But it's from this time that we see an explosive popularity of firearms in the hands of commoners. Now, can you imagine? You and I both know that what brings us together, this art that brings us together, that has been so modified and cosmetically codified over the generations, started out in the idea of self-protection. It was only and ever about fighting. It wasn't the lifestyle, the cultural recreation, the rule-bound sport, the business. It was about being able to defend yourself. But you see, people don't talk about that, and the reason they don't want to talk about it is because it destroys the narrative that the status quo is pushing about how wonderful our tradition is. Now, you and I are, and most likely everybody's going to listen, we are all so passionate about what brings us together. We love it. It's in our blood. It's in our DNA.
Right.
And one of the reasons that we study history is to better understand this. But nothing takes away from the guy says to me the other day, he goes, we did a television interview on Kensei, and the guy goes, "Oh, so self-defense, what's the best one?" I went, "A gun." And he went, "What?" I said, "I'm sorry, I'm from the real world." I said, "Ask anybody in law enforcement, criminal justice system, military, security." I said, "Look, you shoot the guy. It's as simple as that. Or if you're in law enforcement and you're covered by rules, you stun him first or something. But they're not gonna, guys flying at me with a knife. I go, hey, yeah." And that's just the way things are, And I said, yes, I said, if I'm going to roll with somebody or I'm going to do, I'm a catch wrestler. I'm not a BJJ guy, but the same. I'm going to roll with somebody or I'm going to do some clan stand. You're not trying to kill the guy. I'm rolling. Got trapped there. I might have to grab somebody somewhere to create an anatomical weakness and then exploit the weakness to put a rear naked choke on a guy or something. Now you and I understand that. But if I was out in the parking lot getting into my car and I could jump from behind, and as I'm going down, I see another pair of boots, coming out my face, I'm not going to try to put that guy in a leg lock.
No.
I want to get the hell up as fast as I can
Right.
and either get the hell out of Dodge or reaching the car for my stub nose 38 is what I want. Oh,
so one of my podcasts, the title was The Deadliest Martial Art.
Yeah.
And, I think people were expecting me, because I've studied so many different arts, were expecting me to like pick one of the arts I studied as the deadliest martial art. And basically,
you pick heckler and koch instead.
Right. Well, I said there's no such thing. There's only dangerous people, deadly people. You can have a guy that's never studied a martial art that's extremely dangerous in life and death combat. And this idea that a certain art or a certain way of fighting, no, that's not how real life is. Like me as a police officer, my goal is not to kill the criminal. That's the last resort. My goal is to take him into control. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to use
that's as a police officer.
Right.
You're bound by moral and ethical law. For me as a civilian, I wouldn't be confined by the same thing if someone was trying to kill me.
Well, especially as you're older. Like that's one of the things I talk about now. I just turned 60.
You said I'm older than you.
Well, I just turned 60 myself. And I said, listen, if I'm in a parking lot, I'm a civilian now. If 3 guys come up to me, it's not going to be about controlling them. It's going to be about putting them down hard and fast. Yeah. And that's 100%. What original karate was about. I mean, you 100%. See some of these techniques Kyan does, Motobu. I mean, some of the techniques Tatsuo is doing on Steve Armstrong in the video. And then, his son, Kichiro Sensei, who I've trained with extensively, he said to me on more than one occasion, he says, Michael, your karate is not like mine, because his karate is for health and fitness. He says, your karate is like my father, self-defense only, right? And even I think in Tatsuo's day, the self-defense had gotten probably begun to be a little bit watered down compared to Kyan's day, compared to Yabu Kensu's day.
I think one of the things that I have always liked about Isshin-Ryu karate, and I must admit, I grew up, I was coming of age as a young black belt in the early 1970s. And, who was the guy in Detroit? Willie
Adams.
Willie Adams, and then Francis Everett and my brain is.
I hear you.
Certainly Armstrong, but in my day in the early 70s, the toughest guys on the block were the Isshin-Ryu fighters. We weren't concerned so much about the kata because we weren't doing Isshin-Ryu kata. We were doing everything else as his brother. And don't forget, it was also the age of the kung fu was starting to unfold. So everything that was flashy. Right. We were doing this. We're not so interested in everything. Right. Here's the interesting part. I've now looked, I've been studying all this stuff and I've been looking at it. I got some old footage of Nakazawa Join and Okahara Bunne and guys who were doing Kyan-based karate. I'm going to tell you, their Shorin-Ryu looks a lot like Isshin-Ryu to me. I'll tell you. So the walk away from that is, Jesus, Isshin-Ryu is probably much closer to what this guy would. And those are fighting words with some people. But here's the interesting part. It has evolved so much, but Isshin-Ryu, and I don't mean Isshin-Ryu has not evolved, but I mean Isshin has really preserved that in a time capsule. And here's something that Shimabuku Zempo Sensei told me that was a kind of a light. I should have known this because I'd heard it elsewhere before, but it they say when the time is right, the sensei. Right. He goes, you gotta remember, he said, when Tatsuo was teaching the Americans, he said it wasn't just an opportunity to make some money, which was in scarce reserves in those days. And so if I can get $2 a month.
He was making a lot of money. He was making
but he said he's like this tall. You got a shot of him and Armstrong. I mean, this is ridiculous. Now Armstrong was a big guy to start with, but I mean, he literally just up to his chest. And he goes, they were in awe of him.
Right.
So you can imagine Tatsuo was teaching these monsters, and I heard the same thing from Oyata. I heard the same thing from these guys who were out there doing Okinawan Kempo under Nakamura Shigeru. He said, Jesus Christ, he said, we were getting teeing off on these American Marines. These guys were going to Vietnam and they were young 18, 19-year-old guys, and they just wanted to get in and mix it up. He said, we put these guys down. And he said, so if you contrast that with our idea of what fighting is about, it's not surprising to learn that these guys were so vicious, and that guys like Kyan and one more thing, I think it had to be Andy Sloan I was talking. This guy's like a walking.
Oh yeah, he knows a lot about Isshin-Ryu history.
This guy, he would go, Sensei McCarthy, it was actually Thursday, 4:00.
Right.
He's so meticulous, But he said we were talking about when Tatsuo started training with him, and he says it was 19 and he says, he goes, his wife says, no, it was before we got married. You may remember we were over there. I can't remember exactly,
right?
But which puts it back to another 2 years,
right?
If you imagine training, and back in those days, he trained with Miyagi, trained with Taira, he trained with Kyan, trained with Moto. I mean, Jesus, that's
well. Hold on, though. But also,
that's like the four horsemen of.
What was the original name of Isshin-Ryu? Chan Miguate. Chan Miguate.
Okay. Or Chanmite, yeah.
Right. So why would he name his style Chan Miguate? Again.
So by the way, just when you're saying that, you do know. I'll just use the English version because my Japanese one's down there. I don't know if you remember this little book.
I have it. I have it right here in my library. Right.
Yeah, I got it in. At the USK Grand Nationals in New Orleans, 1981. It was on a little table. Those guys were all there. And,
did it come with did it come with a little certificate?
I got the little certificate.
I got it too.
I got the little certificate in here and all that. But here's the interesting part about it is, Motobuchoki, irrespective of whatever else is trying to pass it off as today, describes his own practices as Okinawan Kempo. Okay, so if you ask anybody here in Okinawan Kempo, right away their mind goes over to Nakamura Shigeru.
Right.
He's the guy who created Okinawan Kempo.
Right.
But hang on. This is 1926.
Right.
And he's already writing the book as an expert the year after he fought the guy down in Kyoto. Okay. Right. So now, and all of a sudden, just hang on a second, we get to the page.
So you said he killed him. You said he killed him. Is that confirmed?
No, he didn't kill him. No.
He didn't kill him, right? Okay.
The story is, and once again, it's this self-serving stuff, because it sounds great that the guy this called killed the foreigners. Like Mr. O'Brien and the story of Halyun Jar with the Chingmo Association in 1909. He died off of. We're all going to die off of Japanese soil one day because he was a foreigner staying here, and he went back home and he ultimately died. Right. It was 30 years later. I don't know, but. And whether he died or not, who cares, right?
Right, it's irrelevant.
The title of Kyan's book, well, it's in Japanese, but the title of Kyan's book, it says Okinawan Kempo, an illustrated book of how to fight. And so I'm not saying anything. It's not my job. My job is just research and writing. So I will present it. So
I'd love to see you do a book on Yabu Kensei.
Okay, so it's in the works right now, and it's not by me. It's by my colleague Thomas Feldman in Germany. Because I told you, what excited me most of all about the historical studies was to find out how the function of kata, what was wrapped up in these times. I discovered, as I say, using the acts of physical violence and habitual human nature as a contextual premise, and then learning how to effectively negotiate these acts of physical violence on this pathway. My Mandalorian, this is the way, to follow a pathway to functionality, and then being able to separate the two-person practice, ritualize the solar representation to a miniature template, and then by linking the templates together into some abstract geometry, you created something greater than the sum total of its individual parts. And therein, irrespective of the lip service you pay to whatever the style is what we call kata or templates or routines or whatever. But they don't serve. They were never meant to teach you anything.
Right.
They serve to culminate what you should have already learned in a highly functional two-person practice.
Right.
So, in my opinion, it's the two-person practice. That's the fighting art. And the funny is when you look at these bubishis and I looked, Jesus, 30 years ago, Hans Telhofer, Nicholas Better, all the fight butches, and
right. I have those books too. I have them too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's all the same stuff throughout the centuries. And I'm not even going to talk about weapons and all that. I'm just saying it's all the same stuff. So I don't need to I just want something, and I love the compliments given to me, but they're aimed at criticizing me. McCarthy made all this shit up. I wish I could be that clever to make it.
See, here's what I say. I say it's not, because I've been accused of the same thing in Isshin-Ryu. People will see my bunkai in Isshin-Ryu and they'll say, "Oh, that's Calandra." But meanwhile, the headmaster, the son of the founder, tells me it's fantastic. He says, "Keep it going," right? So my thing is I don't think we're inventing anything. I think what we're doing is we're rediscovering the way things were done.
That's the term I used back in the day. I said, here's what research does for you is it helps you rediscover that which has already existed. And I would love, maybe in another podcast, is to lead people down a path of understanding. Here is how and why the historical issue was created in the first place. I'm going to start around the 1840s when guns started coming in, right, and how that destroyed the narrative of you training all your life to be the martial art master. Right. And then how about within 1 century, around from the late 1890s to the early turn of the century, how the Japanese said, let's go back, and based upon a German, in my opinion, who was a physician and a lecturer at Tokyo University, who said, well, in Germany, we've used swordsmanship and grappling to keep fit and certainly in a culture like Okinawa, where void of social assistance and welfare and stuff like that, Jesus, health and fitness would be very important there. But right, not to mention the fact of keeping your body young and fit to serve as a conscript to support the war machine. Right. So up until there's this whole vacuum period of time in between, right, that nobody ever wants to talk about. Right. When I talk about it, they go, right. Violence. We don't want to go down that pathway. Right. Karate has to be carbon copies of everybody, which is this Japanese mentality, of conformity. Is it's such a highly individual. Right. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Listen, this has been great. I mean, you probably gave me enough for 3 or 4 podcasts. And I'm holding the book up again. Everybody should get it. Okay.